Jessica Tang bought her own house in her 6th year in Los Angeles. Not with Charles Liu. She paid the down payment herself. The deed had only her name on it. This was the most important lesson she had learned in America. In a marriage, the person sleeping next to you could be the shrewdest businessman you'd ever meet, and the biggest mistake a woman could make was showing all her cards. She told no one when she went house hunting. On signing day, she brought only her lawyer. The house was in Irvine, 4 bedrooms, 2 living rooms, a backyard, good school district, 15 minutes from the accounting firm she'd started. She stood in the empty living room, looking through the floor-to-ceiling windows at the lemon tree in the backyard, its branches thick with leaves, and felt that 6 years of swallowing her pride had finally bought her a place to breathe. Her phone buzzed. A message from Charles: "Mom made braised pork ribs tonight. Come home early. Also, Kevin wants a new car, can you check how much liquid cash we have?" Jessica stared at the message for a long time. A slow smile curved across her face. 6 years. She had waited 6 years for this moment. Her thumb hovered over the screen for a moment, then she typed 2 words, "Got it." After sending it, she opened her phone's notes app and added one more line to the ledger she'd been keeping for 6 years. From the first entry, Charles's mother's plane ticket to the U.S., $1,280, to last month's, Kevin's car down payment loan, $15,000, the numbers ran like a silent river, each drop reflecting the face of a woman who had learned to keep her head down and smile. The note was titled with 4 words, "Repayment Ledger." Jessica put her phone away and took one last look at the lemon tree. In a few months, it would be heavy with bright yellow fruit, so sour they'd make your teeth ache, but cured with salt and sugar, they'd turn into something sweet that lingers on the tongue. Just like her last 6 years. 6 years earlier. Jessica Tang was 24 when she married Charles Liu. They got their license in Shanghai. Charles was the textbook definition of elite, Tsinghua undergrad, Stanford master's, senior engineer at a mid-sized Silicon Valley tech company, pulling in the equivalent of over $200,000 a year in RMB. Her mother cried buckets at the wedding, telling anyone who would listen that her daughter had married well, that her son-in-law was a high-tech talent from America, polished and respectable, with a future as bright as a diamond. Jessica thought she'd gotten lucky too. Charles was decent-looking, spoke softly, didn't smoke or drink, and his only hobbies were basketball and reading financial statements. When they were dating, he took her wine tasting in Napa, photographed her at Fisherman's Wharf, and posted their photos on social media with the caption, "The rest of my life, please take care of me." Everything was perfect, like something out of a lifestyle blog. 3 months into the marriage, Charles offered to add her as an authorized user on his U.S. bank card. Jessica was touched at the time. What a generous man, she thought, someone worth trusting. It wasn't until much later that she realized every purchase she made on that card triggered a text message straight to Charles's phone. Every dress she bought in San Jose. Every coffee. Every box of makeup. He knew about all of it. At the time, Jessica had no idea. She'd quit her job in Shanghai and come to America on a spousal visa, full of enthusiasm for her new life. Charles had rented a 2-bedroom apartment in San Jose, close to his office, for $3,200 a month. Jessica thought it was a bit pricey. Charles said it was fine, his salary could cover it. "But since you're not working right now, we should be careful with money," he added, his tone mild, as if stating an obvious fact. "I'm supporting 2 people on my salary, and I still send money to my mom every month. It adds up." Jessica nodded. He wasn't wrong. The next day, she started browsing job postings online. She had a degree in accounting and a Chinese CPA license, and her English was decent. But her spousal visa didn't come with work authorization. She'd have to wait for her green card, which would take about a year. 1 year. She could handle that, she thought. She'd use the time to pass the US CPA exam and learn how to run a household. Back in China, She'd never had to lift a finger, her parents had spoiled her, but she was married now, and there were things she needed to learn. The first dish she mastered was braised pork ribs, because Charles said his mother's braised ribs were his favorite. Jessica tried over a dozen recipes, experimenting 5 or 6 times, until she finally produced a plate of glossy, tender ribs that fell off the bone. Charles took one bite and his eyes lit up. "Not bad, Jess. You're at least 80% of my mom's level." Jessica felt a swell of pride. She was making real progress on the path to becoming a good wife. She had no idea that those ribs were only the beginning. 5 months into the marriage, Charles's mother, Margaret, came to visit from China for the first time. Before this, Jessica had met her mother-in-law only twice, both times at meals around the wedding, and had come away with the impression of a sharp-tongued, smiling woman. Margaret had taken Jessica's hand and said, "Jessica, now that you've married into our family, you're one of us. I'll treat you like my own daughter." Jessica's eyes had welled up. She really had married into a good family. On Margaret's first day, Jessica cooked a feast. Margaret tasted every dish and praised every single one, lavishing so much compliment that Jessica's heart soared. After the meal, Jessica went to wash the dishes, and Margaret settled in the living room to chat with Charles, her voice carrying just clearly enough into the kitchen. "Charles, your wife's cooking is way too salty. Is this what you eat every day?" Jessica's grip on the plate she was washing nearly slipped. She froze for a few seconds. She must have misheard. Then Charles's voice came through, flat and casual, "She's still learning. She'll get better. Get better." Margaret's voice rose a notch before dropping again. "You make that much money a month and this is what you eat? You look thinner than before you got married. If your father had eaten like this every day, I'd have divorced him years ago." Jessica stood at the sink, her fingers gripping the plate's edge so hard her knuckles went white. She didn't say anything. She finished washing the dishes, dried her hands, walked into the living room, and smiled. "You're right, Mom," she said brightly. "I did put too much salt today. I'll do better next time." Something flickered across Margaret's face, surprise, maybe, that Jessica had heard, or that she'd smiled after hearing it. But Margaret had spent decades navigating office politics in a state-owned enterprise. She recovered instantly, her face softening into a doting smile. "Oh, Jessica, I didn't mean it that way. I just worry about Charles working so hard, he needs to eat well. Don't take it to heart." "I won't, Mom. You're absolutely right." Jessica's smile grew even sweeter. That night, lying in bed, Jessica stared at the ceiling, a heaviness pressing on her chest for the first time. She wanted to say something to Charles, but he was already snoring, one hand draped across her waist. She told herself it was nothing, maybe her mother-in-law was just blunt. No need to make a mountain out of a molehill. As it turned out, just being blunt and a pattern of passive aggression were separated only by a son's willingness to let it slide. Margaret stayed for 2 months and found something to criticize about every corner of Jessica's home. The floors weren't clean enough. The clothes weren't folded neatly enough. Jessica woke up too late. She only knew how to make the same few dishes. Each criticism was wrapped in the candy coating of, "I'm saying this for your own good," so that pushing back made you the ungrateful one. Jessica swallowed every retort, "I was up at dawn buying groceries," and kept smiling. The real gut punch came later. 3 months after Margaret left, Charles's father, George, arrived. Officially, he was coming to visit his son. Unofficially, he was coming for medical treatment. George had chronic hepatitis that hadn't responded well to years of treatment in China. Margaret had heard about a specialist at Stanford Medical Center and arranged for Charles to bring his father over. At the time, Jessica was buried in CPA exam prep, spending every day in the study drilling practice questions. After George arrived, she cut back on her study time and took over the full burden of caregiving, cooking, making soups, scheduling doctor's appointments, driving, picking up prescriptions, fighting with the insurance company. George spoke almost no English, so every interaction with the hospital fell on Jessica. She'd spend hours on a single phone call, arguing over a single charge. Charles. He was busy. Work was demanding. He had meetings. He had travel. Aside from paying the bills, he barely lifted a finger. One night, Jessica was jolted awake at 3 a.m. by George's coughing. She found him running a fever and rushed him to the emergency room. She spent the whole night with him in the ER and didn't get home until 8 the next morning, exhausted. Charles was just getting up, pouring coffee in his pajamas. He saw her come in and said, "Rough night. What's for breakfast?" Jessica stood in the doorway, still in her shoes, and stared at him. "What?" Charles took a sip of coffee, puzzled by her expression. "Nothing." She bent down to take off her shoes. "I'll make it." She walked into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and pulled out eggs and bread, moving like a machine on autopilot. But in her head, she was running numbers, the total cost of George's treatment. Medical care in America was notoriously expensive, and even with insurance, the out-of-pocket expenses added up fast. Charles had never told her the exact figure, but she'd seen an email, over $8,000 out of pocket just for 2 specialist visits at Stanford. She wasn't unwilling to help pay for her father-in-law's care. What bothered her was that Charles had never discussed it with her. He'd simply told her, "Dad's coming to the US for treatment," and left it at that. No conversation about cost. No conversation about their finances. No acknowledgement that this was a shared decision. He treated her as though she had no stake in it, she was just there to cook, clean, and stay out of the way. Was she the mistress of this house, or an unpaid housekeeper? George stayed 4 months. His condition improved. Jessica lost 8 pounds and failed 2 sections of her CPA exam. Charles patted her shoulder. "Don't worry. You'll get it next time." Jessica smiled and said nothing. That night, she opened her phone's notes app and created a new document. She typed 4 words, repayment ledger. She didn't put any numbers in yet. She just needed a marker, a reminder, something she might use someday. She wasn't sure if she'd ever use it. But having it there, at least, made her feel like her silence was strategic, not spineless. Life went on. Jessica got her green card and work authorization in the 2nd year of her marriage and immediately started job hunting. She hadn't finished her US CPA yet, but her Chinese accounting experience and bilingual skills got her several interviews. She ended up at a Chinese-owned accounting firm, small but stable, starting at $50,000 a year. $50,000 wasn't much in Silicon Valley. But it was her money. On the night she signed her offer letter, she splurged on a $40 bottle of Chardonnay and cooked a whole feast. Charles came home and blinked at the table. "What's the occasion?" "I got a job." Jessica raised her glass, eyes bright. "Start Monday. $50,000 a year. Audit and tax." She expected him to be happy, to hug her like he used to say, "That's my girl." Instead, Charles just said, "Oh," sat down, and picked up his chopsticks. $50,000 after taxes isn't much. Don't get too excited. Jessica's glass stopped halfway to her lips. "Also, what about the house once you're working?" Charles continued. "Cooking, cleaning, and my mom's coming again next month. Can you handle it all?" Jessica lowered her glass slowly. Her smile faded. She looked at Charles's handsome, indifferent face and felt like she was seeing a stranger. Or maybe she was finally seeing him as he really was, a calculating man who kept meticulous accounts in his own head. In his view, a wife was a household appliance, not a person with independent will and emotional needs. Your mom's coming again? Jessica asked. I didn't know. She called today. Said she misses us. She'll stay a few months. Charles picked up a rib. What's the problem? She stayed 2 months last time. Your dad stayed 4 months. Now she's coming again for months. Jessica set her chopsticks down and kept her voice steady. Charles, we've been married barely 2 years. Your parents have been here for over 6 months combined. I'm not saying they're not welcome, but can we at least talk about timing? I'm starting a new job. She's my mother. Charles cut her off, his voice flat as a weather report. She can come whenever she wants. She wants to see her son. Are you saying you have a problem with her? Jessica's breath caught. She realized something in that moment. Charles had never factored wife into his relationship with his mother. In his mind, he and his mother were a unit. Her needs were his needs. His wife's feelings were supposed to make way for that unit. No, he didn't even consider that his wife had feelings. I don't have a problem with her. Jessica took a breath. I just think we should have our own space. Space? Charles let out a humorless laugh. Jessica, this apartment is mine. Every dollar you've spent for the past year has been mine. And you're talking to me about space. My mom comes for a few days and you can't handle it. Ice water ran down Jessica's spine. She stared at him. For the first time, she didn't look away. She stared so long that Charles grew uncomfortable and dropped his gaze to his plate. You're right, she said softly. Your money. Your apartment. I don't have a right to set conditions. She stood up, cleared the dishes into the kitchen, and turned on the faucet. The rushing water drowned out the tiny, strangled sob that escaped her lips. That night, she lay on the king-size bed, a vast invisible chasm between her and Charles. She listened to his steady breathing and replayed his words in her head over and over. Every dollar you've spent for the past year has been mine. So marrying him, quitting her job, crossing an ocean, learning to cook and clean, taking care of his parents, spending all night in the ER, none of it counted. In her husband's eyes, it was all paid for with his money. She was a kept woman with no right to ask for anything. Fine, she told herself in the dark. If this marriage is a transaction to you lose, I'll treat it like one. Every penny you spent on me, I'll pay it all back. Every last cent. And when I'm done, I won't owe any of you anything. She turned away from Charles, pulled her phone under the covers, and opened that empty note. Repayment ledger. Her thumb flew across the screen, typing numbers. The plane ticket. George's medical bills. The designer bags and skincare products Margaret had charged to the joint credit card at the outlet mall. From memory, she listed every expense she could recall. If she wasn't sure of an exact number, she estimated, always high, never low. She wouldn't take a penny she wasn't owed. But she wouldn't let the Liu family take a penny from her either. At the bottom of the list, she typed, on the day this debt is repaid, this marriage ends. She locked the screen and closed her eyes. True to schedule, Margaret arrived. She brought more luggage, bigger demands, and even less restraint in her criticism. Jessica was up at 7 making breakfast, too watery, Margaret complained. She rushed home from work at lunch to cook lunch, not hot enough, Margaret sniffed. She came back at 8 after working late to find Margaret watching TV, an empty snack wrapper on the coffee table, muttering about what Jessica could possibly be doing out so late. Jessica said nothing. She cooked, cleaned, did everything, then showered and opened her laptop in the bedroom to keep working. She was doing well at the firm, her boss valued her, clients gave good feedback, and she wanted to pass the US CPA as fast as possible, then go out on her own. She needed a plan B. A safety net that let her walk out the door at any time. Plan B took shape in her 3rd year of marriage. She passed the California CPA exam and started taking on freelance bookkeeping and tax work on the side. Her clients came through word of mouth in the Chinese community, small business owners, freelancers, a few immigrant investor families. She worked quietly, depositing every dollar into a separate account Charles knew nothing about. Meanwhile, Charles's career was climbing. He got a promotion, his salary hit the low 300s, and his ego swelled accordingly. He started traveling more, staying out later, coming home less. One time, she caught a trace of unfamiliar perfume on his collar. She said nothing, just set that shirt aside, took a photo, and filed it away in a folder on her phone. She was past anger. Anger needed hope as fuel, and she'd run out of hope long ago. She was just waiting. Waiting for the right time. Waiting for Plan B to mature. Waiting for the numbers on that repayment ledger to be covered, $1 at a time. What she didn't expect was that the Liu family wouldn't let her wait that long. During the spring festival of her 4th year of marriage, Charles's younger brother, Kevin, showed up. Kevin was 3 years younger, with a mediocre college degree and a string of jobs he'd never held for more than a year. Jessica's impression of him came down to one word: flaky. But Charles adored his little brother, gave him whatever he wanted from the time they were kids, and Margaret's favoritism was glaring. Kevin's stated reason for coming to America was to scout the market and look for business opportunities. Jessica knew exactly what that meant: another mouth to feed, another freeloader. But she said nothing, took care of him as usual, cooked, tidied the guest room, and wore her smile like armor. Kevin was smoother than his mother, at least, full of "thank you, sis-in-law," and compliments about her cooking, better than any Chinese restaurant in town. Jessica smiled back, but she wasn't fooled. This one was shrewder than his brother. Flattery was free. A month in, Kevin showed his hand. After dinner one night, Charles set down his chopsticks and cleared his throat. "Jessica, I want to talk to you about something." Jessica was clearing the table and paused. When Charles said, "talk to you about something," it usually meant he'd already made a decision and was merely informing her. Kevin looked at a few projects out here and thinks cross-border e-commerce has potential. He wants to set up an overseas warehouse, connecting Chinese small businesses to U.S. buyers. Startup capital is around $200,000. Jessica set down the plates and turned around. $200,000. Kevin's got 50 himself. The other 150, I want to take it from our side. Charles nodded at the number, as if it were reasonable. Our side. Jessica raised an eyebrow. And by our side, you mean your salary? Our savings, obviously. Charles frowned at her choice of words. We've saved close to that much over the past few years, haven't we? Jessica was quiet for a moment. She knew roughly what their savings looked like, under $120,000. Charles's salary was high, but so was their cost of living, rent, car payments, insurance, daily expenses, plus Margaret's visits, plus Charles's own taste for the finer things. Saving that much was already an achievement. We don't have 150, she said calmly. We have maybe 120, tops. That's close enough. Charles waved a hand. The difference, 30,000, my next bonus will cover it. So what do you think? Jessica looked at him and let out a small, soft laugh. Not a happy one. What do I think? Do you want the truth, or the polite version? Charles's jaw tightened. Don't take that tone with me. What tone? Jessica's smile didn't waver. I'm just asking, are you actually asking for my opinion, or have you already decided, and you're just going through the motions? The temperature in the room dropped. Kevin busied himself with his phone. Margaret's ears, in the living room, were visibly perked. Jessica. Charles's voice lowered. Kevin is my brother. What's wrong with helping him start a business? And besides, most of the money in this house is mine. I have a right to decide how to spend it. The words unlocked a door inside Jessica. Behind it were 4 years of resentment, anger, and humiliation, but they didn't come pouring out. They stood in neat formation, like troops waiting for orders. Quiet. Deadly. You're right. Jessica nodded. Most of the money is yours. You have the right to decide. So go ahead. She turned and walked back into the kitchen. The water came on, just like that night 4 years ago. Charles seemed taken aback by how quickly she'd folded. He blinked, then said to Kevin, "Okay, she's fine with it. Get your documents ready." Kevin grinned. "Thanks, bro." "Thanks, sis-in-law." Jessica faced the sink, her back to them, washing the same plate over and over. In the cover of running water, her face finally relaxed. The curve of her mouth was bitter, but it was a controlled bitterness. 150,000, she thought. Your brother takes 150. Your mom has spent at least 100 over the years. Your dad's medical bills were at least 50 or 60. And that's just what I can prove. Compound interest. Inflation. 4 years of unpaid labor and emotional attrition. When I walk away, you'll know the meaning of settled in full. She turned off the faucet, dried her hands, and walked to the bedroom, locking the door behind her. Repayment ledger opened. At the bottom, she added a new line. Kevin's business startup, advance from joint savings, my share $75,000. She was being conservative. The money had come from their joint savings, and at least 60,000 of the 120 was hers, earned, saved, scraped together. Charles's salary was high, but his spending was higher. The true number wasn't as big as he imagined. She'd call her share 75,000, which was probably a lowball. But the legal number and her personal reckoning were two different things. She'd need the first in court someday. She kept the second somewhere else. She opened another note, one she'd never shown anyone. The title was, Divorce Asset Division, Preliminary Strategy. She'd spent 4 years studying California family law. She'd read over 100 divorce cases. She knew California was a community property state, assets and income during marriage were generally split 50-50. She knew that if one spouse disposed of significant community property without the other's consent, the court could adjust the split in her favor. She'd even researched spousal support formulas. With Charles's income and the length of their marriage, the monthly number was substantial if she chose to pursue it. She wasn't a clueless housewife anymore. She was a licensed CPA, and she'd learned every rule of this long, grinding game. Jessica locked her phone, set it on the nightstand, and closed her eyes. Through the door, she could hear Margaret and Kevin talking, Charles's low voice occasionally cutting in. They were deep in their business plan, excited and hopeful. No one came to ask her, the other member of this family, what she thought of the investment. That's fine. Jessica smiled in the dark. Her investment would pay off at a different time, in a different place, in a different currency. She had patience. After the spring festival, Kevin took his $150,000 and moved to Los Angeles. He leased a small warehouse in the city of industry and started building his cross-border e-commerce empire. He was all energy for the first 2 months, posting warehouse photos and shipping updates in the family group chat like he was already a titan of industry. By month 3, the posts slowed. By month 5, he sent a single message, got screwed. Cargo stuck at customs. Supplier turned out to be a fraud. Charles called him. Kevin was evasive, blaming logistics, blaming partners, blaming everyone but himself. The bottom line was the money was gone. He needed another $20,000 to keep the warehouse rent paid. Charles was quiet for a long time. Then he sent the money. Jessica sat on the couch reading and caught the transfer amount on his phone screen out of the corner of her eye. She went back to her book, turned a page, and didn't react. $20,000. In RMB, that was over $140,000. Margaret's outlet shopping sprees over the years added up to at least $30,000, all on Charles's card, all from the joint account. Jessica had it all recorded. She remembered a small detail she'd let slide back then. When Charles first set up her card, he'd said, "What's mine is yours. Spend freely." She believed him. Then one night after she bought a $200 dress, he casually asked, "Shopping today?" And she realized he got a text alert for every single purchase she made. Meanwhile, he threw money at his family with no explanation, no accountability. The double standard was breathtaking in its boldness. In the 5th year of their marriage, Jessica's side business reached a new level. Her client list grew from scattered individuals to several stable small to medium businesses. Monthly freelance income settled between $4,000 and $6,000. Her private account had nearly $80,000 saved, still short of her ultimate goal, but it was real leverage. She also did something else. She bought that house in Irvine. The down payment was $120,000, $80,000 came from her private account, and $40,000 she'd pulled from the joint account using a clever bit of misdirection. She'd told Charles she was doing a short-term bridge loan for a client, payable within a month. Charles barely looked up from his phone when she asked. In his mind, this was pocket change, not worth his attention. A month later, she paid the money back. The client had been herself. She'd used the timing gap to complete the down payment. The deed was in her name alone. She'd checked with a lawyer. Under California law, this was separate property, since the funds could be traced to her independent income. As long as she paid the mortgage from her private account, the house had nothing to do with Charles. Her escape route. Her fortress. Her lifeboat. Charles remained oblivious. He was deep in his own world: work, travel, social obligations, the occasional dinner at home. He treated Jessica like a well-functioning appliance. No attention needed. No maintenance. Just don't break. The one time he showed serious interest in her was in the fall of their 5th year. He came home one night, sat beside her with an unusual eagerness, and said, "Jessica, I heard your firm got some big new clients. Tech companies in Silicon Valley." Jessica looked up from a client's financial statement. "A few." "Why?" "That's great." Charles smiled. "Anyway, my parents want to buy a place here. Saves them the hassle of flying back and forth. I've been looking at Irvine, down payment would be around $200,000. I'm a little tight right now, so I was wondering if you could." He didn't finish. He didn't have to. Jessica set down the report and turned to face him. Charles was 33, well-maintained, looking younger than his age. Dark gray shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, top 2 buttons undone, casual but calculated. She'd looked at this face for 6 years. She'd gone from loving it to getting used to it, from used to it to numb, from numb to appraisal. "Why should I pay for your parents' house?" Her tone was mild, as if discussing a math problem. Charles's smile flickered but held. "What's mine is yours, right? We're a team. Your money is our money. Our money." Jessica repeated the words like she was tasting stale wine. "Charles, since we're a team, let me ask you a few questions. Just answer honestly." "Sure." "When your mom first visited, she spent $13,000 at the outlet mall on bags and skincare. On our joint card. Did you discuss that with me?" Charles's smile tightened. "When your dad came for treatment, total costs were over $50,000. Out of pocket was close to $20,000. Did you discuss that with me?" "That was for my dad's health. When your mom came the second time, she stayed 5 months. I didn't tally everything, but I know she lost at least $8,000 gambling. Did you discuss that with me?" "That was her entertainment. Earlier this year, you transferred $170,000 to Kevin. $150 for the business, $20 for the rescue. Did you discuss that with me? Jessica's voice never rose. She delivered each line like a line item on a balance sheet. With every line, Charles's face grew harder. What is this, Jessica? His voice tightened. Are you keeping score? Not keeping score. She smiled. Just using your own logic. You said your money is our money, so you don't need to consult me when you spend it. So by the same logic, my money is our money. Why do you need to reach out your hand and ask for it? Charles opened his mouth, then closed it. He couldn't find a way to counter her argument, it was airtight, built from his own reasoning. After a long silence, he switched gears. His posture softened, his voice dropped to a wounded tone. Jessica, I know these years haven't been easy for you. But I'm the eldest son. Taking care of my parents, my brother, it's my duty. You married me, so it's your duty too. We're in this together. 5 years ago, Jessica might have been moved. Not anymore. She knew that when Charles said, "We're in this together," what he meant was, what's yours is mine, and what's mine is still mine. You're right, we're a team. She nodded. So last year, when my parents wanted to trade up their apartment and were short 100,000 RMB, why didn't we take 50 from our joint account to help them? The micro shift in Charles's expression was almost imperceptible, a crack in the mask that healed in an instant. But she'd seen it. Your parents are in China, it's different, he mumbled. Different how? Jessica tilted her head, still calm. Your parents are parents. Mine aren't. Your family spent over 300,000 without asking me, but when my family needs 50,000, it's different. Silence. A long one. Charles didn't answer. He pushed back from the table, muttered, "Ridiculous," and disappeared into his study, closing the door. Jessica looked at the closed door and smiled faintly. She hadn't expected him to say yes, and she hadn't actually wanted his money. She just wanted confirmation. Confirmation of where she stood in his priorities. She'd gotten her answer, exactly what she'd predicted. She opened her phone and added one more line to the repayment ledger. Emotional damages and unpaid labor compensation, TBD. Enough, she thought. The time was close. A few more clients, a bit more cushion in her private account, the Irvine house finished, all her affairs in order, then she'd pull the trigger. But fate didn't give her the luxury of a clean exit. In the fall of her 6th year, Jessica made a discovery. She was tidying the study, looking for an old client file. Charles's desk was a jumble of papers and clutter. She rummaged through it, and instead of the file, her hand brushed against a manila envelope. It wasn't sealed. Inside were folded sheets of A4 paper. She hadn't intended to look, but the words handwritten on the back caught her eye, Mountain View Property. Mountain View was prime Silicon Valley real estate, astronomically priced. Jessica's curiosity flickered. She opened the envelope and pulled out the papers. A purchase contract. The buyers were Charles Liu and Margaret Liu. A townhouse in Mountain View. Sale price, $1.2 million. Down payment, $250,000. Mortgage, $950,000. Signed 2 months ago. Jessica stared at the contract for a full 3 minutes. 2 months ago. 2 months ago, Charles was telling her they were a little tight, asking if she could chip in for his parents' house in Irvine. And all the while, he'd already bought a $1.2 million property in Mountain View, in his name and his mother's. Her name wasn't on it. She hadn't even been told. Jessica put the contract back in the envelope, put the envelope back in the drawer, closed the drawer, walked to the living room, sat down on the couch, and remained motionless for a long time. Her mind was eerily quiet. No anger, no self-pity. Just a clarity so sharp it felt like the air before a tornado, still, heavy, expectant. She'd known this moment was coming. She just hadn't expected it to arrive this way. A $1.2 million house. $250,000 down. Even with Charles's salary, after mortgage, car payments, daily expenses, and his endless family support, he couldn't have more than $100,000 in liquid cash. Where had the $250,000 come from? The answer was obvious: he'd taken it from their joint account. More than he'd ever let on. He might even have taken out a second mortgage. In California, this had a name: the improper disposal of community property. Jessica closed her eyes, took a deep breath, opened them, and picked up her phone. Patricia. It's Jessica. We spoke before about divorce and asset division. I'm ready to proceed. I just found evidence that my husband transferred a significant amount of marital property into a house in his name and his mother's, without my knowledge or consent. I have the documents. Patricia's voice sharpened with professional interest. Jessica, can you come to my office tomorrow? Bring everything you have. I will. One more question: I have a property in Irvine. Down payment and mortgage are from my independent income. Deed is in my name only. Can it be classified as separate property? If you can trace the funds to your independent income and prove they were never commingled with marital accounts, then yes. Jessica, you've done your homework. Thank you. I'm an accountant. She hung up and walked to the balcony. The California autumn sky was burning orange, the distant mountains traced in sharp detail. 6 years she'd lived in this country. 6 years that had turned her from a starry-eyed bride to a calculating accountant, from a romantic to a realist, from someone who believed in marriage to someone who believed in safety nets. She didn't know if she'd grown or if she'd fallen. But she knew one thing for certain. She owed no one anything. The next morning, Jessica sat across from Patricia Chen. Patricia was a Chinese-American attorney in her 40s with a reputation for being sharp, unsentimental, and very effective in the Los Angeles Chinese community, specializing in family law and asset division. After reviewing all of Jessica's documents, she set her glasses down and rubbed her nose. Jessica, you are the most prepared divorce client I've ever seen. You're not consulting. You're launching a campaign. Jessica smiled. I just don't want to get taken advantage of. You've already won step 1. Patricia slid the files back across the table. Your documentation is airtight: joint account statements, records of large unauthorized transfers, the purchase contract for the property, and your personal income records for all 6 years. These materials put you in a dominant position for asset division. What can I expect to recover? Under California law, community property is generally split 50-50. But because your husband has clearly engaged in improper disposal of community property, especially transferring large sums without your consent into a property with his mother's name, the court is likely to award you a compensatory tilt. Conservatively, you're looking at 60 to 70%. Patricia leaned back. Also, if you pursue spousal support, with your husband's income and 6 years of marriage, you could reasonably get $6,000 to $8,000 per month for about 3 years. I don't want spousal support. Patricia raised an eyebrow. Why not? Because I don't want any ongoing connection to him. I want a clean cut. No monthly checks, no name on any of my statements, no reminder of these 6 years. Patricia considered this. I understand. But strategically, you can use it as a bargaining chip, offer to waive it in exchange for more favorable asset terms. Then let's do that. There's one more thing. Patricia pulled out another file. Your brother-in-law, Kevin, took $170,000 from your joint account. That's an unauthorized gift under the law, and it's recoverable. The same applies to the expenses your husband's parents withdrew from joint accounts during the marriage. Jessica was quiet for a moment. She thought of Margaret's smile, fake as costume jewelry. Kevin's easy, thanks, sis-in-law. George's fevered face in the emergency room. For 6 years, she'd called them family. Jessica. Jessica lifted her gaze. It was clear and steady. Pursue it. Every dollar that's mine, I'm taking back. After the meeting, Jessica didn't go straight home. She sat in her car for a few minutes, then opened her phone. She'd bookmarked something weeks ago, the anonymous tip portal on Charles's company's internal website. She selected 3 photos, Charles and the woman with the perfume, coming and going from a hotel parking lot in San Jose. Timestamps clear. License plate visible. She typed a short note. Charles Liu, a senior engineer at your company, has allegedly used marital funds to pay for rent and luxury goods for an extramarital partner. Please refer to his bank statements from August to October 2024 for verification. She hit send. A tap. A checkbox ticked. One more item off the list. A few days later, Charles called Jessica in a fury. Jessica. HR pulled me in today. Those photos, did you send them? Jessica was making soup. She balanced the phone against her ear and stirred the pot. What photos? Don't play dumb. The anonymous complaint. Oh, that. She turned the heat down. I'm not sure which you're referring to. I have quite a few photos. There's the hotel parking lot. The rent transfer receipts to that lady friend of yours. The necklace she posted on Instagram, the one charged to our joint account, I believe. I made a note of it. Silence on the other end. Jessica tasted the soup. Perfect. What did HR say? Reprimand? Leave. Jessica. Charles's voice dropped, ragged, almost pleading. How did you become like this? You weren't like this before. What was I like before? You never used to keep score. Now you're. I never kept score because I was stupid. Jessica's voice was still gentle. I keep score now because I'm awake. Look, the soup's ready. I have to go. Take care of your business. She hung up. Margaret's call came right on cue. Her voice came crackling across the Pacific. Jessica. Are you insane? You reported him to his company. Do you have any idea what he's been through? Margaret. Jessica put the phone on speaker, set it on the coffee table, and kept sorting through her files. What Charles is going through at work isn't my concern. What I am concerned about is the savings insurance policy you purchased in Hong Kong, $450,000, with Charles as the beneficiary. The shrieking stopped. Jessica continued, that money came from Charles's transfers from our joint account to yours. Total, over $320,000. I have all the records notarized. Do you know what the courts do to people who engage in fraudulent asset transfer in California? A long pause. Then Margaret's voice came back, low and shaky. How do you know about the insurance? I'm an accountant, Margaret. Jessica had finished with the files. She leaned back on the couch, easy as Sunday morning. I've been keeping books for 6 years. Every dollar accounted for. If you don't believe me, I've already sent you a copy of the ledger via DHL. Should arrive at your Shanghai address the day after tomorrow. You. Also, Jessica cut in, my attorney has traced Charles's offshore account transfers over the past 3 years. He's been cycling money through loans and repayments, funneling marital assets into your accounts. It's a textbook case of fraud and asset concealment. I could press criminal charges if I wanted to. Margaret's breathing was labored on the other end. Finally, she rasped, what do you want? Jessica paused. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but final. What I want is spelled out in the divorce agreement. Your family owes me a specific sum. You pay it back. Then I walk away, and none of you ever hear from me again. That's my final offer. And if you threaten me again, I will file for a restraining order." She hung up. Saved the call recording. Forwarded it to Patricia. 3 days later, Margaret was waiting for Jessica at a coffee shop in Irvine. She'd flown 12 hours overnight, her eyes red-rimmed, her untouched coffee cold. When she spotted Jessica walking in, she stood abruptly, her lips working. "Jessica." Jessica sat down across from her, set her bag aside, folded her hands on the table. "Margaret, you didn't fly 12 hours for coffee." Margaret shoved an envelope across the table. "Here. 500,000 RMB. Take it. Let's work this out privately, please. Charles is falling apart. The company is investigating him. If you keep pushing, he'll be destroyed." Jessica glanced at the envelope and didn't touch it. 500,000 RMB. That's about $70,000. Your son owes me more than 300,000, not counting interest or punitive damages. And by the way, does your attorney know you're here? Does Charles? Is this money yours, or is it coming from an account I don't know about? Margaret's face cycled through shades of red and white. Jessica stood, picked up her bag. "Any further communications should go through my attorney. Next time we meet, bring yours. I won't have any further off-the-record conversations with you." She walked out into the California sun. Behind her, she heard Margaret's muffled, almost imperceptible sob. She didn't look back. The divorce proceeded as planned. The evidence was airtight. Charles's lawyers folded. A settlement was reached in 2 months. Jessica's terms were inked into the final document, line by line. 1. All assets owed to her were to be paid in a single lump sum, no installments. 2. Kevin's debt of $170,000 was guaranteed by Charles, to be repaid within 24 months. 3. Jessica waived spousal support in exchange for Charles's irrevocable waiver of any claim to the Irvine property. 4. The judgment would explicitly note Charles's improper disposal of community property. On signing day, Los Angeles was drenched in an unusual winter rain. Jessica sat across from Charles and his attorney in Patricia's conference room. Charles wore a dark suit, his face hollow, dark circles carved under his eyes. He hadn't met her gaze once, his eyes stayed fixed on the papers. Patricia read the terms out loud. Jessica signed without hesitation. When it was Charles's turn, his hand trembled over the signature line. He stared at it for a long, long moment. Then, with a visible grimace, he scrawled his name. Patricia started listing the timeline for asset transfers. Charles cut her off. "I heard you. That's enough." He stood, grabbed his coat, and walked toward the door. As he passed Jessica, he stopped. She didn't look up. Her eyes rested on the rain-washed street outside. "Jessica." His voice was sandpaper. "You won. Happy?" Jessica looked up. The face she'd loved, resented, endured, it was a stranger's now. She reached into her bag and pulled out a single, neatly bound booklet. She slid it across the table toward him. On the cover, embossed in simple letters, Marriage Ledger, Volume 1 of 6, 2018 to 2024. "This is what I kept for 6 years, she said, her voice low. "Every expense. Every transfer. Every time you took money that wasn't yours to take a loan. 6 volumes total. I'm keeping the originals. This is the first volume, a copy. For your records." She rose, leaned in slightly, and spoke in a murmur meant only for him. "You always thought you were smarter than me, didn't you? That you were in control. That I couldn't survive without you. Charles, from the day I opened that ledger, I knew I was walking out. I let you think you were the master of this house for 4 extra years. Not because I had to. Because I chose to. She straightened, tapped the booklet. Good luck, Charles. With everything. Then she turned and walked to the door. Her heels clicked on the polished floor, steady, even, like a countdown that had finally hit 0. Behind her, Charles's voice cracked. Jessica. She didn't stop. Jessica. She pushed through the door and stepped into the light. The rain had stopped. The sky was rinsed clean, the distant hills gold and green under the winter sun. She stood on the steps for a moment, breathing. Then she smiled. A small, unguarded smile. Life after divorce was lighter than Jessica had imagined. The Irvine house was almost fully set up. One of the 4 bedrooms had been converted into a study, with a wooden desk by the window that caught the afternoon light. The lemon tree in the backyard had started to bear fruit, greenish-yellow, promising sourness, sweetened by the slow work of time. Tang and Company. Accounting, her firm, grew faster than she'd expected. Existing clients stayed. New ones came through referrals. Her monthly income stabilized above $12,000. She hired a young assistant, a recent graduate from a local college, and moved her office from a small Irvine cubicle to a proper suite near the Spectrum. One evening, she scrolled through a Chinese-American forum and found a thread titled, "Ex-husband's family has imploded, ex-wife is soaring." Someone had posted a detailed update. Charles's Mountain View house had been foreclosed. He'd moved into a smaller apartment. The woman with the perfume had left him. The top comment read, "He thought he married a meek little accountant. Turned out she was a nuclear warhead with a CPA license." Jessica smiled. She didn't reply. She locked her phone. The next morning, she posted a photo on social media, her new office, sunlight streaming in, a glass of water on her desk, Irvine's blue sky visible through the window. The caption read, "6 years ago, I came to America with 2 suitcases. Today, I have a house, a car, my own firm, and a lemon tree. My only regret is that one of those suitcases was full of braised pork rib recipes. I can finally throw them out." The comments exploded. Someone asked, "Has life been terrible after the divorce?" She replied, "Terrible. The marriage was terrible. This is the best time of my life." The screenshot spread to the forum, where another thread erupted. Some called her ruthless, others brilliant, others the gold standard for Chinese-American divorce. She read all of it. She didn't respond. She put her phone in her bag, grabbed her keys, and headed out. When she got home that evening, a package was waiting on the front step. The return address was Charles's handwriting. She frowned, opened it, and found a small box and a manila envelope. A sticky note on the envelope read, "Found this while cleaning out old stuff. It's yours." Inside the envelope was a photo, a young woman in a cap and gown, standing at the gate of Shanghai University of Finance and Economics, beaming at the camera. Her graduation photo. On the back, in faded ink, someone had written, 22 years old. Future unlimited. She was 22 when she met Charles. When she got on that plane to America. Before the 6 years that reshaped her. That girl was full of stars and oceans, of hope and romance, of faith in love. Jessica stood at the door with the photo for a long time. Then she opened the box. Inside were a pair of small pearl earrings, the ones she'd worn on her wedding day, passed down from her grandmother to her mother to her. She'd thought she'd lost them in the San Jose apartment. She'd looked for months. She held them in her palm, the pearls glowing in the twilight. She walked to the bedroom, stood before the mirror, and fastened the earrings. The woman who looked back was thinner than the girl in the photo. A fine line had appeared at the corner of her eye. But her gaze was steadier. Sharper. Younger, somehow, than she'd felt in years. She looked at her reflection and said softly, "You're back, aren't you?" It was a statement, not a question. She walked out to the backyard. The lemon tree was heavy with fruit, yellow and bright in the fading light. She reached up, picked one, carried it into the kitchen, sliced it thin, dropped it into a glass of cold water, added a little honey. She carried the glass to her favorite spot, the lounge chair under the tree, and sat down. The California dusk was closing in, warm and lavender. A breeze moved through the branches. A flock of birds passed overhead. The air smelled of lemons and grass. She took a sip. Sour. Sweet. Cold. Clean. She thought of those words she'd typed into a memo years ago. On the day this debt is repaid, this marriage ends. The debt was paid. The marriage was over. She sat here, under a tree she'd planted with her own hands, with her own money, in a house that belonged to no one but her. She wasn't repaying anyone. She wasn't waiting for anyone. She was just here. Drinking lemon water. Breathing.